Hi everyone, for this new video, I'm so happy to have my favorite animator ever. He has won an Annie Award for his work on Evolve, who was a big part of the Overwatch team and lately worked on Valorant as a lead animator. Please welcome Dave Gibson and let's get started. Hi Dave, welcome to the channel. Can you introduce yourself for the people who don't know you?
Hey, I'm really happy to be here. My name's David Gibson. I am an animator now coming up on, oh boy, it's about 20 years. I've been doing this. I did film for about 9 years, and then I've been games now for the last 10 to 11 years. Yeah, I've got two kids, another a little one on the way. Will be
Oh,
here in
cool.
September. Yeah. I live in Long Beach, California. Two dogs, also two chickens.
Cool.
So we've got a full house. Yeah.
Okay, great, great. So I generally ask where are you from, but you just answered this, so that's perfect. And I always start with fast random question just to get a better profile picture and get warmed up. So what's your favorite color?
Oh boy. Uh, I think, lately it's kind of like pink or like a pinky purple color.
Okay,
I don't know, like my computer background right now is like kind of that color. Uh,
okay.
I'm feeling that lately. But if it was like for a car or like for a motorcycle or something, let's go with motorcycle. I think I would want a white bike. Yeah.
Sure. So I think I know the answer, but are you more cat or dog?
Oh, I'm definitely probably more dog, but I love cats.
Okay,
I've
cool.
had cats and yeah.
Are you more Daisy or Goliath?
Daisy or Goliath? I am definitely more Daisy
Yeah.
because she's just, she was like lovable, happy, kind of puppy
Hmm.
mentality, and Goliath was a lot more like, just angry, brutish kind of Hulk smash kind of thing, and that's not really me.
Your favorite band or musical artist?
It's got to be ska would be my favorite type of music, and I would probably go with like Streetlight Manifesto, Real Big Fish, between those two right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite movie of all time? It's even harder.
Whew. Uh, I think I gotta go with Jurassic Park because anytime that's on,
Hmm.
I have to stop doing whatever I was doing. It's nothing's as important as sitting down to watch that.
Yeah, cool, cool. Are you more support, DPS, or tank?
Definitely tank.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
like I like to play tank. I don't I'm not I can't aim well. I'm not fast enough
Yeah,
anymore, but I can, I'm happy to stand up in front and just take a bunch of damage.
yeah. Cool. Your favorite drink?
Oh. Hmm. I go with oh, that's tough. I'll go with coffee.
It's 9 p.m. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I guess at 9 p.m. it would be, a wine
Okay,
would
cool.
be
Yeah,
good.
good one. That's fine. Your favorite video game?
Oh man, what are you doing this to me? I gotta say, I think so Link's Awakening, which was the Game Boy Zelda game that came out, that that is definitely number one. And I think Breath of the Wild, I think the two of them kind of jockey for first place for
Okay.
different reasons.
Yeah, cool, cool. And finally, favorite food?
Oh, favorite food. I gotta go with like lasagna.
Okay,
Yeah, for
lasagna.
sure.
Cool, cool. Fine. Okay, we are ready. I'd like to tell a bit about your art history, how you came into animation and stuff like that. So, can you tell us a bit about that? Did you get to animation school or art school, or when did you start being an artist in a way?
Yeah, growing up, I always liked art. I was always drawing. I was always interested in the art side of things. But throughout middle school and high school, I really got into music, and I was playing the cello a lot, and that I thought that was kind of where I was heading. But then it hit me late in high school where I realized if I made it my job and I had to do it all the time, I think I would end up hating it.
Mhm.
You know, it would become this thing I had to do
Yeah.
instead of this thing that I enjoyed doing. And around the same time, a friend of mine gave me some 3D software to play around with called True Space, which wasn't horrible. I didn't know what I was doing, but that kind of just opened my eyes to like, oh wow, look at this. Like it made sense to me. It was like really interesting to kind of play around with that and just, moving cubes around and things like
Yeah.
that. And so I made the decision not to pursue the music thing. And I really wanted to try to go to animation school. And like, I want to be an animator. And, Jurassic Park had a lot to do with that. Toy Story, the games I was playing, like just, I'm like, wait, I think I could do this. And then I found out that there was a really great art school right down the street from where I was living in Florida called Ringling School of Art and Design. And so I applied there in my senior year of high school, which would have been 1999. And I didn't get in. I wasn't accepted. And that's because I had never taken an art class. I didn't have a portfolio. I had nothing to show basically. And so I went and I talked to one of the counselors there, and they gave me like a list of 10 things to work on. Like, oh, you could, create these things for your portfolio and then reapply next year. And so that's what I did for that whole next year. I just worked on that. I think I had 4 jobs that whole year just to keep myself busy. And then I reapplied the following year and got in. So I went to Ringling and graduated in 2004 with a BFA in computer animation. That's where I got my start.
Okay. So you got into it through school, and then you start I think in the film industry at Tippett Studio, something like that. Was your first
Yeah.
job? Can
Yeah. Well, my
you?
first job was actually at EA Tiburon in
Yeah.
Orlando when school was wrapping up, and all of a sudden I was getting all these telephone calls and letters in the mail about how I owed a whole bunch of money. I realized at that point I was like, I can't be picky anymore. I just need something that's going to pay the bills, and EA was the only offer that I was given. And it was just to clean up mocap on a football game. I'm not a big football fan, but I was like, hey,
Yeah,
I
that's the
need the
first step.
money, and it's a step, right? And it ended up being great. I met a lot of great people and learned a lot from it. And then right after that, I did 1 year there. And while I was there, every night I would go home and I would animate, and I would do more like acting stuff and just trying to do like lip sync and just try to figure out character animation more. Cause that was always my goal. It's like, oh, I want to be a character animator, someone who brings characters to life. And during that year, I got in touch with Tippett because they were ramping up to do Charlotte's Web. And they were like, hey, we like your stuff. You want to fly out and check out the studio? I was like, yeah, I do. Let's go.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've forgotten. Read that you have worked on Madden football, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the time, yeah. And then jump into Tippett Studio. Can you explain a bit what you did there? What kind of
Mhm.
project? And
Yeah. That was, of all the places I worked, I would go back to Tippett in a heartbeat. Like that place has a special place in my heart. It's so unique and small and scrappy. And my role there was, so Tippett kind of got they got their name for like stop motion monsters and cool creatures. They did a lot of stuff in like, yeah, RoboCop and the first Hellboy and Matrix and Constantine. They did a lot of really cool like demon stuff in that movie. But then they did this string of commercials for Blockbuster Video with these talking and dancing hamsters and guinea pigs, and they had to develop fur, like really nice real-time fur that they could simulate. And they kind of got pigeonholed into this like, oh, we do cute furry creatures. And so for Charlotte's Web, they landed that show for Templeton, the rat. So we animated Templeton on that show. And then there were some crows. We also had to do some crows. So my role would be, okay, here's a sequence. And there are, let's say in this sequence, there's 10 shots of Templeton. And maybe there's 5 animators on the show. So each of us will do 2 shots in that sequence. You get your shot, it's already bid out. So they'll tell you like, oh, hey, this is a 1 week shot. So start it on Monday. We need it finalized by Friday, or maybe it's a 2 week shot, or maybe it's a really easy one. So they're like, hey, do this as fast as you can. Maybe it's a 2 day sort of shot. There's always some turnaround time in VFX when you're working with, an outside studio. So for that one, I think it was Nickelodeon Paramount for that. So we would have to send out our animations and wait for feedback from the director. And so you always kind of needed more than one shot to work on. So I would get a shot, you get your dialogue, you get the match move set. If, say there's like a camera move or something, someone else has already match moved the camera, placed the trough or the fence post or whatever needs to be there. And then you just start animating, you start posing it out and trying to hit the marks and sync up with the rest of the shots. And then you get notes on it the next day and you just keep going until it's final. And that's pretty much everything I worked on at Tippett when I was there. I think it was about 4 years that I worked there. Enchanted was the same. So working on Enchanted, the main thing that we were working on was Pip, the chipmunk, when he was in the real world in New York City. So again, it's like that realistic fur that they had really pioneered, along with like cute acting creatures. And what was really fun about Pip was that he couldn't talk. So he had to pantomime a lot of things, and it was all about, his facial expressions and the poses he could hit, and he's trying to communicate, but he can't, and he's kind of frustrated about it. So it was like a lot of like subtext and interesting things in there. And yeah, it was a blast. Like it was always a ton of fun.
Cool. And then you transitioned to Sony Picture Imageworks to work on Cloudy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a total lucky break. I had so you brought up Jeremy Collins earlier, and he was there at Sony with another good friend of mine, Alan Hawkins, and we had all gone to school together. But when we graduated in 2004, we all kind of like poof, like scatter all over the place. And Jeremy ended up going out to LA and working on some stuff, and Alan actually landed a job straight out of school at Imageworks with Sony. And they had been there now, so it had been about 4 years, and we'd been bopping around, I was at Tippett and stuff, and they were both now at Sony. And they called me up one day, and they're like, "Dave, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, another talking animal movie. It's fun though. Like it's, it pays the bills, and I get to animate all day, and I love the people, and I really liked Berkeley, and they were like, well, we got something that we think you should check out." I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, can you drive down this weekend? Can you drive down to LA? And I was like, sure. I don't have anything going on. This is way before kids and anything, I was like, yeah, I'll drive down, no problem. So I get in my car Friday after work, I drive down to LA, and we go to the studio, and they just show me all these tests they're doing for Cloudy. And they're like, check this out. Look how much crazy fun stuff we're trying to do. And the test, so if you thought the first Cloudy was kind of zany in the final, movie that it was, you should see these tests, because it was bonkers, like off the wall. How far could we go? Like how crazy could we get? And once they showed me that, I was like, I gotta work on this movie. Like this is unlike anything I've seen, especially in CG, and the fact that they were like, and they were like, come down, you got to work on this. You got to work on this. And they basically, that was my first experience where the people I knew kind of just slotted me in and put me in touch with the right people. So before I knew it, I was on the phone with the animation director, and he was interviewing me, and I was talking with him about stuff on my reel and things I've learned, this and that. And then the next thing I knew, Sony's like, here's an offer. You'll start this day. I'm like, wow, this went so fast. Like, what in the world? And then I show up, and both Jeremy and Alan were like, hey, we put this desk right here between our desks. A desk doesn't belong here, but we found an extra one, and we just shoved it here. So you're going to sit right here with us. And it ended up being like, that was the best show ever. Like, that was so much fun working with those guys. And I learned so much from that show, like just how to push, and look at your shapes and think about just how far can you push poses and that kind of stuff. Oh man, that was fun.
Yeah. Cloudy is like I don't know if it's groundbreaking at the time, but I do remember when I saw it for the first time, that was just crazy. The deformation of the characters and I mean some I don't know how to say it, but it was kind of super stupid at some scene were like super crazy stupid. And I love it, I love the cop character and stuff like that. Oh, we want to be like super strong man and stuff like that. It's
That
awesome.
was the other thing. Like Phil and Chris they were the directors on the movie. So Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and they just did they were produced Mitchell's versus Machines just
Yeah,
now. They did
awesome
Lego
movie.
Movie, and
Yeah,
they've been doing a lot
awesome.
of awesome stuff. Uh, they would give us that note during dailies a lot. They'd be like, "All right," like they'd laugh at the shot and be like, "All right, that's funny. Can you make it stupider? Like, is there some way we can just make it so stupid, And uh, I've never heard that note since, but that
Yeah.
it was so much fun. You're like, oh, you want me to make it? Yeah, I can make it way stupider.
That's
It was a
cool.
ton of fun, and that's the other thing I learned from those guys too is they had never done an animated film. They'd never directed an animated film, let alone any kind of CG animated thing. And to see directors, like I'm one of 73 animators on that project, right? And then to see the directors sit there in front of you and go, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. We have no clue what we're doing. You guys are the experts. So we will try to give you feedback and guidance, but you feel free to tell us if you think something could be better or if you think we're wrong." And that was mind-blowing to me because up until that point, anytime I had interacted with a director, they were always like, "Do what I tell you. I know what's
Mhm.
best." And
Yeah.
to see just the joy and the pleasure and happiness that the entire Cloudy crew had because of how they were leading it as the directors, it comes through in the movie,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely it resonates.
And that made a huge impact on me. Now when I'm leading teams and I'm working with a big group of people, I know that, like, hey, I can say I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, and it'll be okay. Like,
Yeah.
no one's gonna fire me. And I can ask the crew for help. I can be like, guys, I don't know what the best thing to do here is. Do you guys have any ideas? Let's collaborate. Let's figure this out together.
Yeah, I guess that's super cool, and it's better for you to make the project your own. You feel way more involved into it. That must be super awesome. Super
Yeah.
awesome. That's great. So then you transition to the video game industry. What pushed you in this way?
That's
Was
a
it?
good question.
Yeah.
So there were a couple factors. The biggest factor was that I had realized I really wanted to make games. I really wanted to get into games. It's what I did when I went home. It's what I would spend my free
Mm.
time doing. Like, literally, I'd come into work and I would talk with all the other animators about the games that we're playing, right? And talk, and we would even play during our breaks. Like, we would go and we'd huddle around the TV and play new games. And it just felt like it was time. I was like, I think it's time for me to switch over to that. But what helped push me was that Sony wanted us all to move to Canada. They were like, we want to move all production to
Okay.
Vancouver.
Mm.
And my I just met this girl that would become my wife. And I was like, I don't want to move to Canada. like like I really like this girl. Why would I move? Like, I live here. I don't, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I would love to stay if there's a way I could stay and just work in LA, and they were like, no, we want everyone to move up to Vancouver. And I was like, okay, I think this is time. And then that's just when I just put feelers out, trying to find a game studio that would take, a film animator. I didn't know anything about making games, right? So I needed to find a studio that would be patient with me and had some kind of bandwidth to recognize that, like, hey, I can animate, but I don't know the other half,
Mm.
right? And that's when I found Turtle Rock Studios, and they were the team that made Left 4 Dead, and they were making this new game, Evolve. And what was awesome about that interview process was I found their website on like a Thursday, typed my stuff in, attached my resume, and was like, "Hey, I hope to hear from you guys." Friday morning they call me. Like the next day they call me, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to come down? Like when can you come down to the studio and we'll just show you the game. See what you think." I'm like, "Well, I can come down on Monday." And they're like, "Great, all right, how's 11?" Like, that's awesome. I drive down, like just a few days later, I drive down. They pitch me the entire game. They show me all their concept art. We just start jamming. Like, we're already collaborating. Like, they were like, "What do you think about this creature? What do you think it would do?" Or like, "Do you think this would make sense in the game? How would it move?" And I'm like, "Oh," and like before we know it, we're working,
Yeah.
and we're having this really great energy.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I need to work on this project. I need to work with these people and see this through." And it was great because even though it took 4 years for Evolve to ship, that I was able to go to video game making school for 4 years.
Yeah.
There was tons of time for me to learn and make mistakes along the way. Like, the biggest one was they were in 3D Max, and I had spent the previous 10 years and all of my schooling in Maya, and they also needed me to rig.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, well, I can rig in Maya, but I don't know what that means in Max, as well as I've never animated. I've never opened Max, so I don't know, how this is going to work." But they were patient with me, and it also taught me I can teach myself anything now that the internet exists.
Yeah.
And everyone and the forums and tutorials are out there and all that stuff. I was able to just sit, like, "Oh, what's this button do?" Google it, read. Oh, okay, now I get it. And over time, just I learned all that stuff and was able to put it to use and ship it in a game. And that it just was eye opening. Like, hey, I can do this this thing that I didn't know anything about previously, but just with a little bit of time and effort, I can teach myself. And as long as people are going to be patient with me, and we can turn out something that's pretty cool, at the end of the day.
So you learned rigging at school, or were you rigging kind of off work, or were you involved into rigging in the previous project on movies or stuff like that? Because the rigging seems pretty advanced on Evolve, and there is a lot of rigs. And this is one of the things that I was, this guy rigs and animate. That's what I want to do in my life.
So the curriculum at Ringling is very comprehensive. So it's not just animation. It was a lot more general when I was there. Now it's a little bit more focused. Like, if you just want to do animation, they will support that. But when I went there, it was much more, hey, you are going to learn everything, the entire process. You will model the character, you will UV the character, texture. First of all, you'll concept the character, like all this stuff. You will then rig the character. And this was back when there wasn't like a built-in FK IK switches.
Yeah.
And we would do these rigs where we would create like 3 arms for a character. One would be an FK, the other 2 would be IKs, and you had to link them all together so that you could switch between them. Like, the idea of parent spaces didn't exist, so you needed 2 IKs in case you wanted one on a table and then one on, on his chest or something, that you could move between them. And so we had to do a lot of our own rigging. I mean, we had to do all of our own rigging at Ringling. So that foundation was there.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about rigging, like, "Oh, wow, Dave can rig," like there are certain sort of tiers, I think, when it comes to riggers and tech artists, right? I am the absolute bare minimum tier, right? I can skin a character, put some bones in it, throw an IK chain. That's about it, right?
Okay.
That was enough for Evolve. That's all we needed on Evolve. Now I have a lot of great friends that are professional tech artists, and I am nowhere near what they can do and the types of tools they create and the types of fancy things they do on their rigs. But the basics of, just joint chains, hierarchies, what skinning is actually doing to the mesh, that kind of stuff. That's the foundation. And I think once you have that, you're pretty powerful, especially for games,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, all you're doing is spitting out
Yeah.
just bone data and vert skin data. That's it. None of the fancy rig stuff gets into the engine. So a lot of times you can solve what you're trying to get in game with like just simple bone chains and some fancy skin weights.
Yeah, definitely. You don't need to
Yeah.
create like crazy blend shapes and stuff like that
Yeah,
that are
exactly.
mixed up with
Yeah.
pickers and stuff like that. So
Well,
yeah,
and I think it also helps, being forced to keep it simple
yeah,
makes you really think about, oh, is it really necessary for the rig to have this functionality,
mm,
or can I just animate the cloth by hand, right?
yeah,
Can I just take 20 agonizingly annoying minutes to straight ahead key this tentacle?
yeah,
Yeah, it would be awesome if it was like an IK spline chain and I could, move it and pull it through it like super fancy. But it's like, honestly, I just needed to kind of wiggle a little bit. I can do that with an FK chain,
yeah, yeah,
But I got super embarrassed when we brought more people onto the project. And then I was like, oh, hey, just open up the rig for Goliath or open up the rig for Kraken, and they'd go in there and they'd be like, hey, how do I switch all the tentacles to IK? And I was like,
you can't
you can't.
for the
I don't know
Kraken
how to do that.
character, right? I've been working on a lot of octopus character and snake characters lately. That's crazy
Yeah.
complicated, and I think I reached this moment where I've been trying to rig them, with the ultimate rig, failed, and go forward kinematic, all the way, and say, okay, just spend time animating it. That's gonna be okay. So I can relate to this, but
Yeah,
I
a
don't
lot.
want to share the rigs with other people.
Right. You get embarrassed, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, don't look at this. Don't look at this. It's like-
So you got a nomination and at the Annie Awards, and I think you won it too for Evolve. That must be
yeah,
some kind of, I don't know if it was a surprise or something. Can you tell us a bit about this event in your life?
yeah. So the Annies they're a really big deal in film.
Yeah,
And what was really interesting was in the film industry, you could be working at Sony on a film and then go to Disney. And then while you're at Disney, the movie you worked on at Sony comes out, and then your work could be nominated for an Annie. But you're no longer there, right?
yeah,
You're over at Disney. But Sony doesn't care. Sony's like, yeah, wait, we're proud of you. Way to go. Like, there's no problem. We submitted your stuff and now you're up for an Annie. Um, it was not like that in games. It was kind of weird a little bit. Like, I had left Turtle Rock and I wanted to submit my stuff for an Annie because there were a couple reasons. One was um, I was not super impressed with what I was seeing being submitted to the Annies from the game industry. And I was kind of like, I think it's time we step this up. Like
yeah,
this, I don't know if anyone even knows about this because the things that are being entered are not, I don't find them very impressive, and I'm not trying to, take away anyone that submitted their stuff
yeah. Sure,
before
sure.
I did, but I was just kind of like, oh man, we could do better, you know? And so I really wanted to submit my stuff just as kind of like a bar raiser, like, hey, look, bam, we can all do better. Also, why aren't other people in the game industry submitting their work? I mean, there's phenomenal work all over the place. So I really was like, I want to put my name in there and see if it happens. But I kind of caught a lot of flack from Turtle Rock because I had already left and gone to Blizzard, and they were like, "But you don't work here anymore, so we don't support this." And it's like that's the wrong attitude, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I submitted the work that I created while I worked there. It has nothing to do with where I currently work. It's about the art that we all work together to make, and put out there. And it just caught me off guard because in the film industry, it's like yeah, I don't care where you work. We want to submit your stuff, and if you win, we're going to be happy for you. It doesn't matter if you're already at Disney or, whatever. And so there was we kind of had to go back and forth there a little bit. And I just sort of learned a lot. Like there were many times where I could have just said, you know what? I don't want to burn any bridges. This isn't worth the hassle. I'll just pull my stuff out. I won't do it. But there was this voice in the back of my head that was like, no, this is important to push for. It was 4 years of your life.
Yeah.
Just throw your hat in the ring. Like, just try, right? And if you don't win, don't get nominated, whatever. At least you tried, right? Because you can never try again.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'll just. Also, I had a lot of doubts about myself and my own skills and about if I was making the right choices during that entire project, because there was no supervisor above me. There was no other animator that I was working with that was like giving me direction or anything. I was making the calls on this stuff. And so there was a little bit of me like, hey, what if I feel like I was doing it right, and maybe there'll be a little bit of validation if I'm nominated that I was right, that I was making good choices, right, during this entire project. And then when I won, that's what I felt, was that I just felt like, yes, all right, I was right. Like, I
Yeah,
did make
definitely.
good decisions. I did. The hard work did pay off. People saw it. People appreciated it, that sort of thing. And so it was very meaningful, especially just because I'm so proud of that entire team that worked on Evolve. A lot of people, it was their first project, not just their first game project like me, but like literally like the first thing they ever worked on. And it was such an amazing journey. When I started, there was nothing. There was no game. And then 4 years later, during that course of the 4 years, you're like, wow, we made a thing.
Mm.
And now people are playing it and it works. And there's like a giant statue and there's toys and people are talking about it. And you're like, wow, 4 years ago, this didn't even work, So I don't know. I'm super proud of that. And I'm glad that I saw it through. I think there's a good lesson there as well. I thought, and maybe this is me just being stupid, but I thought that night I won, right? And I was there with my wife and a bunch of friends, and we had a great time and we celebrated and everything. And I thought the next morning I was going to wake up and my life was going to be completely different. I thought I was going to have voicemails and emails like, hey, we want to hire you. Hey, we want you to make your own game. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be pretty busy because everyone's going to be caught. Nothing changed. No one cared. It didn't do anything, right? And so I think that's a good lesson for people, just to be like, hey, that's most likely nothing will happen. If you ever win an award, if you get game of the year, nothing's going to come of it. Don't expect something to come of it, because I learned like, oh, that's the wrong thing to expect. You should just enjoy the moment and celebrate it, and then take everything you learned up until that point and put it into the next thing,
And I do believe that it's motivating. I mean, it has validated your choices, so maybe you got a bit more confidence, and at least you won this. And at that time, I think, I don't know, but like video games artists were not as respected as features movies artists, I think it's something that has been changing for the last 4 years, I guess. Or it's my feedback from, Twitter and the conference I watch and stuff like that. But I feel that before that, the ultimate animator were working, in the movie industry. So when you were saying that you make also this move to push up a bit the video game animation and stuff, I think it was whatever the impact it had on the, in the industry, it was a first move toward this. Like, hey, we are the same animators that made those movies and stuff, and that's a cool legacy,
Yeah.
because nowadays, being you're an animator, whether you're animating for games or movies, we kind of have the same level of respect, or at
Yeah.
least I do feel it's this way. And the gap between video game animation and feature film animation is getting smaller and smaller, technically wise too. So that's cool. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because that's something that always kind of motivated me too, where I was like, I'd see games and I'm like, man, that could be better. And then it also bugged me when I was in kind of the film world, how people would sort of look down on the work in games. And so much of it was just technical limitations,
yeah,
like they were paving the way for where we are now. We get to reap all the rewards, but like through the early 2000s, they were still like, hey, we can only have 100 bones on a character and we can't even skin the verts. Like it just was how far we've come in just about 20 years, is insane. And so now the art is catching up, right? So
yeah, that's great. So you joined Blizzard like in this time period or so. Can
mhm.
you explain us a bit about your experience there?
Yeah. I jumped on, so they had just announced Overwatch, and I was still at Turtle Rock, and we had shipped Evolve, and we were trying to get the sequel stood up and try to get that whole production thing figured out. I could tell it was kind of going south, and that's when a friend reached out to me that was over at Blizzard and was like, "Hey, we just lost an animator on Overwatch. Uh, we're just down the street from Turtle Rock. You interested? Like we could really use you."
Mm.
And I think my reel was going around at the time, that Evolve reel, and so it was
Yeah,
like a big deal or
yeah, really.
and I was like, yeah, I'm into it. Like let's meet up, let's get some lunch and just talk and see what you guys need and if I'm a good fit and that sort of thing. And uh that was an incredible project. And the thing that the reason I signed right on, I was like, absolutely, was as soon as I talked with the team, I realized that they valued the animation and the characters and that they were scheduling it properly. They were like, no, every asset gets enough time so that it can be animated at the highest quality possible. Because that was kind of a really big problem for a lot of the game industry. When I would talk to other animators, they'd be like, how long did it take you to do, like how long did you get to do 1 5-second play of the game? And I'm like, oh, it would take me about a week. I get about a week to do that. And they're like, what? I was asked to do that in like a day and a half.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's why the quality isn't really, where it could be. And it's not your fault. It's clear that whoever's running it, just either they don't understand or they don't value what high quality animation can bring to the project. And so that was incredible. I worked on that for a few years. I got to after we shipped it, I got to lead a couple post-launch events like the Halloween event and like Lunar New Year event and stuff. And so I would lead the animation team on it, and we would come up with like, oh, what emotes do we want to do? Like I remember the Halloween one, it was like Reinhardt like smashes a hammer and like all those loading screens that we did with Witch Mercy and stuff. And that was the other great thing about that project, was they really trusted the animators. And so like for a play of the game, they would be like, what do you guys want to animate? Like what? So you have to do D.Va. Well, what do you think would be a cool animation? And then I would just pitch stuff like, what if she's shooting and then she ejects out and then she freeze frames in the air, like super cool pose and stuff. And they're like, that sounds cool. Can you block it out real quick? And I was like, yep. 2 hours later, I'm like, here, check it out. What do you think? It's real rough. It's real ugly. And they're like, oh yeah, we see it. And then they just trusted us, to pitch the ideas and execute them really well. And it just was a really good back and forth relationship where you were like, I know they value what I'm doing, and they trust me to come up with really cool ideas and execute them well. And so we just had a great time, and the characters were just the
So
some of the best
you
well-designed characters ever.
it was a bit of the same stimulation you had on Cloudy in a way, where you're
Hmm.
working on an exciting project and they say you, okay, do what do you want to do on this? So that must
Yeah.
be super exciting. So I've read in your I think in your LinkedIn profile or something like that that you worked on an unpublished project too at Blizzard before Overwatch.
So this was after Overwatch.
Okay,
So
after.
I
Okay.
worked for it was a little over a year post launch from Overwatch shipping, and I was kind of talking with my manager and the lead animator. I was going to them like, hey guys, I'm just not challenged enough. You know, one part I don't feel challenged enough, and the other part was is I feel like I could be doing more for the studio. Like I'm very happy to sit and animate all day long. That's fine, but I feel like I could be doing more, you know? So like if there's more for me to do, please let me know. I'm game. Like I want to do it, right? Shortly after that, the art manager came to me and was like, "Hey, your name came up because we were having a meeting about this new game we're spinning up." And everyone was like, "Wait, we should get Dave on that. Like that he would be the perfect fit." And so they told me about it and I was like, "Yeah, let's go." You know, to have the opportunity to go from Overwatch to a brand new game at Blizzard and be there, you know, one of the first hires to help figure out the look, the feel, what it is. Um, I get so much runway to try to figure out like cool animation style. You know, what do we want it to look and feel like? Of course, I'm going to do it. You know, and so I did that for a couple years, and then unfortunately they canceled the project. It was fully playable. It was tons of fun. It had a lot of promise. I won't tell you what it is, but
Yeah, I know.
there were
Yeah.
some articles written about it, so you can look it up. And the articles were correct on what it was. It's a shame that it was canceled, in my opinion. Uh, I think it got kind of caught up in this current Activision Blizzard thing
Transition.
that's going
Yeah.
on, where I mean, pretty much all of the original Blizzard developers have left,
Yeah.
you know, by now, as well as all of their top talent has gone. If they haven't left yet, they're about to leave, you know, and it's just it's a bummer. But when you reach a certain point in your career where you have the skills, the experience, the confidence, you also are like you're able to talk to people and work well with people, and that describes everyone at Blizzard. Like they are just top notch people. And then you take 1 second to look around and you realize you're being paid like 50, $60,000 less than someone who's just at a studio down the street. And you take that to management and you go, hey, I'd like a pay bump, and then they just give you every excuse in the book why you can't have that. And you're like, hang on a second. So like these projects are cool and everything, but like I can't pay my mortgage. So I can't like yeah, I work at Blizzard, but that doesn't help me put my kids through school
Yeah.
or you know or buy a car or go travel or you know enjoy life, you know, and at some point you go, yeah, it's not worth it, you know? Like this was fun, but I think I should probably move on. And that's kind of what I think is ultimately happening. I kind of went off on a rant, but
No, no, but that's interesting. As I told you off camera, I wanted to talk about everything, and
yeah.
and your path. And I think it's important, especially for younger people, to understand that being into a super famous studio. I'd love to work to Blizzard. That was my dream job when I was a kid, but now that I'm kind of older, you also place in the balance whether you'll get excited by the project, what are going to be your responsibilities. So will you be challenged, whether it's famous or not, and your rhythm or quality of life too is important. So
Hmm.
it's very it's a balance not to burn out and to keep on, being excited about what you are doing. So that's great. I was going to ask, is it frustrating to work on a project that doesn't get published in the end?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It so for me it wasn't a frustration like, oh man, I can't show you what I worked on for 2 years, because
Mm,
honestly, like the first couple years of any project all this stuff is throwaway. It might make it into like a GDC talk someday or
yeah,
something, but it's really not for public consumption. It's just you trying to find the way. So that was not what bummed me out. What bummed me out was that as a studio and as a company, they didn't value the team, and that was the thing that really was a hard pill to swallow, was that we had
yeah,
50, I think it was about like 48 or 50 developers on the project. And
that's huge.
when you think about that amount of people and that type of talent working together for 2 years, and then, how you learn to communicate and work together and collaborate and set goals for yourselves and work as a team and achieve them, and you're building the foundation for this project, and then to have someone somewhere just come in and be like, yeah, we're going to cancel that. And then all of you are just poof, going to go to different
Yeah,
projects.
yeah,
You go, hey, uh, I get it if you don't see this working in the portfolio or it doesn't make money or something, but this team has value and you just destroyed it. And I think that says a lot, you know? Like, you could have easily taken those developers and said, hey, Diablo needs help or Overwatch 2
yeah,
needs help.
yeah,
We will go as a unit and we can attack part of that project for you, right? We are already a well-oiled machine that, we work well together, we understand each other. Let us take on the, I don't know, this chunk of the game, or like these specific features or something, but let us remain this unit so that eventually we can drift back and maybe bring this other project back to life or something,
yeah,
but the fact that they just dropped the bomb and scattered us all, it was like, man, like, that's building a team with trust and understanding and
yeah,
communication. That's way harder than making a
yeah, yeah. It
game.
takes time. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think it's better to have a good team of average talent than the best people in the world that can't work together. So
Yeah.
I can understand that. Yeah, and that's a bummer for sure. So I guess this is the time where you left and joined the Riot
Hmm.
team on Valorant. So I watched your interview on Agora community, and we talk a bit about this. It was super fun. So it seemed that you got there pretty like the project was already kind of advanced, and you got some responsibilities without really knowing about the project or something like that. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a bit about this?
So they were very tight-lipped about the project. They wouldn't show it to me during the interview and everything like that. I had two very good friends that were on the project, and they were vouching for it. They were like, "No, no, no, Dave, don't worry, you'll dig it. It's good."
Mm,
But then even towards the end of the interview process, they were like, "If you have to see it in order to accept the job, like, you can come into the studio, we'll show it to you, right? And we'll do that." But on faith and on the good credits of my friends, I was like, I trust you guys. And also I was like, okay, Blizzard, I think I'm done.
yeah.
I should just secure something, but once I got there and I saw it, I was like, okay, we can work with this. We can we can make this work. But it was definitely not in the place that I thought it was going to be in. And then on top of that, they had a very aggressive ship date that was
Okay.
like 9 months out.
Okay.
And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, this thing is not shipping in 9 months. Like, what is going on, But I had never worked on a free to play game. So I was approaching it from like a triple A
Yeah.
boxed product, a Blizzard title sort of thing, or a 2K title. And so I was looking at it more like, how can you get this polished enough to ship it in 9 months when it's just not there yet? Like honestly, I think I joined and maybe 2 characters had final character designs, and we ended up shipping it, I think, with 12 characters. And so in 9 months, we designed, created, implemented, and shipped these other 10 characters from nothing, you know? At the end of my first week there, I was just hired as an animator, and they were like, yeah, just come and just, kick some ass, animate stuff for us, just make it awesome. And I was like, hey, it sounds good to me. They got a lot of free food and free coffee up there at the Riot campus. And I was like, I'm in, let's do it. At the end of my first week, the lead animator was like, oh, hey, Dave, come here. I'm leaving Riot in next week. I'm like, well, I just got here, man. Like, is this is there something going on that I don't know about? He's like, no. It's just another opportunity that's, I can't pass it up. I really want to try it. But I told him you should be the lead. And I'm like, what? Like, but it ended up, it was like exactly what I wanted. Like the challenge was exactly what I wanted and what I needed. And it was so fun. And it was so awesome to work with this team, and the pressure of that date. And the pressure too for Riot, like as a studio, it was their second game.
Yeah.
The first new IP for the studio. It just felt, I don't know, like the entire time, it was just like, wow, this is what I want to be doing right now. Pushing this team, pushing this whole game to be better, in the short amount of time we have, was awesome. And I'm so glad I got to do it. And it was amazing. And then we're actually like, ahead of the game, we fixed the schedule, and we're doing so well, and then everyone has to go home. We're all working remote, and it was like, what is happening? And at first we were like, this will just be for a couple of weeks, and I was like, this will be great, this will be so much fun, more time with my family, and I don't have to commute and all that. And then before I know it, we're shipping the game from home, and it was the weirdest experience. Like, it was so weird, because you don't leave this room. You don't talk to anybody else, except for on the computer. And usually when you ship a game, it's, you go to work and you can just feel the energy. People see you at the studio and they're like, great job, I was playing last night, I love this, I love that, whatever. But you're just sitting in your house and you're like, is anyone even playing? Like, is it working? It just was such a bummer, but at the same time, a really cool challenge, and one that the team they adapted, and they did so well in figuring out, like, okay, let's change up our meeting structure. Let's change up how we communicate to really facilitate everyone being remote. And everyone was super patient, and Riot was like so understanding. They were like, if you need more time for stuff, you need to take time off, all of that. Like, it was actually like a really good experience now that I think back on it. But yeah, again, I'm super, like, so proud of that team and that game. And I know Valorant is it's just getting started. Like, this, it's taking off. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, you mentioned that it was very different when you are working on a free-to-play game, because there is development for a lifetime after the release date, I guess, while it might not be the case for a classical AAA game.
Mm-hmm.
How many people, if you can say it, I don't know, how many people are working on Valorant currently? And how many people are you in charge of as a lead?
Yeah, so total, I think the dev team was probably around 100-ish when we shipped, but that also includes like your marketing team, sure. Your QA team, and everyone. So as far as animators go, I was the lead animator for I think at our peak it was 6 animators, but then I was also managing the tech artists, and we had 3 tech artists. So I had 9 direct reports there, and I wasn't telling the tech artists how to do their jobs because they were phenomenal. It was just more, I would, look ahead on the schedule and be like, okay, you need to get this done by Friday because on Monday we need to start this because VFX needs, this thing, or the animators will be ready. So it was a lot more just logistics, like organizing everybody, making sure that they knew what was coming up and what they needed to focus on.
What do you prefer between feature film animation and game animation, and what makes the difference beyond the technical aspect of things?
Yeah, so what I love about the challenge of game animation is that you have this platform where you can now create a character that is alive and has a story to tell and a personality, but you can sort of walk around them, right? Like you can take your time and look at them and really pick apart what they're doing and what they're wearing and why they're doing all this sort of stuff. And then it's even cooler if you get to control that character and move them around, and there's this idea, I don't know, I'm fascinated by this idea that like to a lot of people, someone like Tracer, the character from Overwatch, it's a real person, right? Like there's real personality and character there. Uh, so much so that they're like bothered by, if someone says something bad about them, or if there's art made of them that they don't like, or a skin or something, and you're just like, sometimes I take a step back and I go, do they know that it's a bunch of polygons? Like it's not real. You know what I
Don't
mean?
say
Like,
that. Don't say that. Sure.
right. But I'm fascinated by that. I'm like, oh, that's incredible. Now, what I really like about film, and we haven't gotten there yet in games, is you design every frame.
Yeah.
You can control every aspect of that one single image that will be on the screen for, a fraction of a second. And there's so much care and attention given to every single detail in every single frame from everyone across the board, right? From where the camera is, to the lighting, to the posing, to the cloth, to the all this stuff. And we aren't really there yet in games because a lot of times the player is in control of the camera all the time. And so we can't predict what they're going to see. What's the composition going to be? How is this going to feel? Will they feel the emotion that we want them to feel when they climb this mountain or turn this corner? What if they're doing something silly like walking backwards and looking behind them?
Yeah.
And then we have to ask ourselves, like, do we take control away from them? Does that break the experience? How do we sort of do that gently so that we can still design what we want them to experience? And that's a tricky thing that we have to try to figure out. And not every game can do it, right? Like an Overwatch or a Valorant or something, like that's not the point of that game.
There is too much things going on.
Yeah, and it's more of a competitive sport than it is like an experience. But something like God of War, or a Naughty Dog title, or like the Spider-Man games or Cyberpunk or something, like they have the ability there where they can really start to craft what the player is seeing in order to communicate this feeling and this, some type of emotional impact. And I think those studios are like just getting started, and I can't wait to see where they go.
Yeah, that's great. What's next for you, professionally wise?
Yeah, so I'm super lucky that I reached out, put some feelers out late last year, and Sony Santa Monica and I started talking last November about the possibility that they needed an animation director for a new project. And I was like, why are you talking to me? I don't but it was incredible. I went through the entire interview process and chatted with Corey for a while, and just their team. That team there is just top notch, and they ended up making me an offer to be animation director there, and of course I accepted. So I start there next week on Monday, and just the fact that they are trusting me to come in and work with this team that has already created such amazing, like high quality games. I'm like, all right, Dave, don't screw this up. Like this is a once in a lifetime chance here with this team. And so I'm just super excited to get to work. I'm like, let's do this. Let's
That's great.
let's make something cool.
So you've been through all the steps from being a young animator to now becoming a director. You are on the top of the mountain. That's super cool. Can you just briefly explain what's the difference between an animator, a senior, a lead, a director?
Yeah, I think the best way I could sum it up is there is there's a massive amount of work that needs to be done on any project, film or game. And a lot of times animation is the bulk of it because it's a lot. It takes a long time to do it. It's very can be painful. And so when you are junior, mid, or senior, a lot of times it's like we just have this giant pile of work to get through, and we just need you to get through it, so that we can mark it done and we can move on to the next thing. And so when you're junior and mid, it's a lot about, you don't know everything, and you actually don't know what you don't know yet. And so you're more of like a sponge, and you're just trying to find your footing and get up to speed, right? Once you get into senior territory, that's where you need to be able to execute on whatever task is given to you. You also need to be, I feel, self-sufficient in the way that like an example would be, hey, we're doing this new system that we're going to decide that the character is climbing ladders now. And you are tasked with doing the animations for the ladder. Cool? You good? Yep. Now as a senior, I would end the conversation there because I would expect the senior to then go, okay, let me reach out to the engineer on the project. Let me reach out to the designer. Let me find out what they need from me. So senior becomes a lot more about not just animating, not just making the asset, but now you're communicating with other people. You are kind of almost now becoming your own little boss in a way. The other part of being senior, on top of executing at a high quality, is you are now an example and a mentor to not just the other animators on the team, but also other people on the team outside of your discipline. So you should be helpful and giving off a type of energy that is inspiring to other people on the team, that's encouraging, that type. So senior is really this moment that once you reach that, like, it's a lot more than just animating at that point. Once you get into a lead role, it kind of depends on the studio and how the studio has it function, but a lot of it just comes down to now you're like physically like higher up because you can see more, right? You're more aware of what's going on. Like you can, if you were a senior animator, maybe you can see 1 mile out, but as the lead now you can see 20 miles out. And so your job is a lot more about, okay, what does my team need? Like, what's an immediate need right now for anyone on my team? Now, what are they going to need? What are they going to need next week? What might they need 3 weeks from now? How do I need to communicate the needs of my team versus the needs of all these other teams and what they need? And like, so now you're like, okay, you're just juggling so many different things. And then on top of that, you have to be able to sit down and say, hey, this animation that you made, it's not cutting it. Here's why. Let's work on it, get it in the game, or, get it finalized, whatever it is. And you are now not really animating anymore, but you are pushing your animators. You're trying to, inspire them and help them make the best work possible. But also you are now the figurehead as a lead for how your team should behave. So how you talk in meetings, how you communicate with your, fellow coworkers, that sort of thing. It's very important that you set that example because everyone else is going to sort of follow your lead there. Then once you start moving up into the director level role, now you can see 50 to 100 miles out, right? And you are so much more removed from the actual pushing of buttons now that you actually have to fight that urge to
Yeah.
go like open up Maya and start like no. You need to be so far removed from that you're thinking now about this thing, this project as a whole product, right? And how does the animation serve the goals of the product, whether it's coming from your game director, your narrative director, whatever it might be. And then on top of that, you have to be in touch with your team. You have to be listening to your team. You need to be asking them, how are you doing? What do you need? And so you're really like this parent that is trying to keep everything on track and inspire the team and drive everyone forward. I also think what's super important in a lead and director role as well is to like always challenge your team. Like don't let them be lazy.
Yeah.
Don't let them kind of
Push
rest
them
on their
forward.
laurels. Like you want to be like, hey, so this last animation you did, like it was good. Like I'm not gonna lie, looked good. I'm happy it's in the game now. That's awesome. I think you could do better. On this next one, I want to see this, and this. Do you think you can do it? Right? Like kind of push
Yeah,
them,
pull them.
challenge
Yeah.
them and say like, hey, I want to see you do it this way, or I want you to do it faster, or I want you to do it better, or, whatever it might be. I've had animators that have come to me after I said, hey, I want you to do this part next. Like, I want you to create this asset next. They come to me and they're like, I've never done that before. So now my job is to go, well, that's not a problem. I know you can do it. Right? Like now I'm your coach. Now I'm going, no, it's going to be fun. Like, yeah, it might,
Be
you
painful,
might
but
fail.
fun.
Yeah, it might be kind of painful. Maybe it's going to look like crap for a while, but I'm here, and I wouldn't assign it to you if I didn't think you could handle it, and that's some of the most rewarding stuff as
Yeah.
in a lead role is when you see that animator come out on the other side of that and they look at it and they go, I did that. And I'm like, I know, let's do another one. Let's go. Like I know you can do it. Come on. And to be in that position where you're just mentoring and coaching and encouraging, it's a really good feeling, because if you were just an animator, you were just impacting the one thing you're creating, the one thing you're working on. But once you get into that lead and director role, you're now able to like multiply and impact so much more. And you got to use that power for good, because I've worked with plenty of leads and directors that were awful. They sucked the life out of the project, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be aware of that as well. Is like you are setting the tone. You can either push the team to be better, or you can hurt the team if you're not on on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of, I mean, like any kind of project, whether it's a movie or a game, it relies on people. And sometimes, when you see comments on internet and stuff, they blame the studio, but there are people in there, and it's very important to find the right person to stimulate the team and increase the quality of the team. I think a good lead will make everybody improve as an artist or as a human being, and this is when you were talking about the project at Blizzard and the teams that has been split in a way. That's a bummer, because it takes a lot of time to create a good team and make them every day better, and that's a lot of money. I mean, someone that has been coached, let's say, well enough for 2 years, they become very valuable compared to any talent that join the team and doesn't know how it behaves, or how to behave with others, and that's so I totally relate to this. And in a way, that's you become somehow some kind of mentor. And so I like to transition to more of the personal artistical life of Dave Gibson, the thing you've been doing with Rise and Spline, for example. So you've been mentoring a bit. I don't know if you are still doing this, but I've seen that you are also involved on the Agora community now. Can you talk a bit about Rise and Spline and the Agora community?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've always been interested in teaching and trying to give back. I was very hesitant early on in my career because I felt like I didn't have enough experience yet. I didn't quite know like I hadn't done it enough to kind of build up the muscle memory and like to really lock down my process, right? Because once you start teaching, once you start trying to explain to someone what to do, the the mental gymnastics you have to do to dissect your own process, like, okay, well, a lot of times us animators, like, we'll do things but we don't even think about it, right?
Yeah,
And then as soon as you're teaching, you have to go, now I look at this and this is what I'm looking at and this is why I'm looking at it, right? And like that takes a lot of work to do that. So iAnimate reached out to me. I can't remember when. I was at Blizzard, and they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, we'd like you to teach a creature class." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." Creatures are my favorite thing to animate, and I don't see a lot of good creature animation out there, if there is any creature animation. And I was like, I'd love to do that. And so I did that for a few years. But one thing that was really kind of a bummer was it was insanely expensive for people. Like, I think it's like $1,500 for
yeah,
one course. Might even be more than that. And what was a real bummer was to try to coordinate all the students that wanted to take the class. I had someone that was like living in Denmark, and then someone else that was
mm,
in Shanghai, and they were in the same class. And I'm trying to find a time that works for me, but then they're up at like 4 a.m. and
yeah,
they're leaving their job early to take, and I'm like, wow, this is cool, but also really like a difficult struggle for everyone. But the thing that really stuck out to me was like the cost. I was like, man, it's so expensive. But I get it too. Like, cause I know the guys that made and run iAnimate. They're not like, living in mansions or
yeah,
anything,
yeah, yeah,
like they're
yeah,
doing it for the right reasons. It's
yeah,
just a
yeah.
very expensive
Yeah,
thing.
it takes time.
Um, yeah, it takes a lot of time, and the equipment, the back end stuff, like it's no
Yeah.
joke. Um, but I got talking to some friends of mine at a GDC, and Esther Coe had taken one of my creature classes, and we were chatting at GDC with a couple other animator friends, and they were like, "Oh, we want to all sign up and take your class together, like as a group." And that got me thinking. I was like, well, that was the other thing about like iAnimate and Animation Mentor and all that stuff, is that it's like closed off, right? You can, once you sign up for a class, you can see all these past recordings,
Yeah.
right? It's all this knowledge is in there, but you got to pay to access it, right? And it got me thinking, like, well, what if you guys, and I think there were like 5 animators. What if you guys pay me half of what iAnimate pays, but then you let me stream it live? So now you all get one-on-one instruction from me, and we'll do it the same. We'll do it 12 weeks, the same amount of time, the same number of assignments, all that sort of stuff. But we'll stream it, and then that way other people can see what we're talking about, because you can pick up a lot just by like listening to critiques and watching how animators
Yeah,
talk and that sort of
definitely.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what was also nice was that we always had time where it was like anybody in the chat have questions, or there would be times where we're, well, do you think the creature should do this in the shot? Like, does this make sense? What are some other choices you could make in the shot? And they would, we would turn to chat, and someone in chat might be like, what about this? And we're like, that's a great idea. That's a really cool choice, And so now it's just this nice big sort of like, circle. We're all feeding off of each other and we're sharing that knowledge. But then at the end of the day, I'm still making a little bit of money, because the hardest thing for me is in when I come to teach a class or when I come to stream or something like that, that means I'm not spending time with my family.
Yeah.
Because I still have a full-time job. I'm still gone all day
Yeah.
when I go to work, right? So there has to be a little bit of incentive on the back end for an instructor, because that time is valuable, that time outside of work. So it worked out perfectly, where it was like, great, we're sharing the knowledge, you're getting one-on-one instruction, and I'm getting a little money on the back end, and it's all pretty fun, right? That was a great experience. We've talked about doing like a Rise of Spline 2, probably like cutting it in half, because man, 12 weeks is a long time. Like a lot of things happen over the course of 12 weeks. And it's also just like a lot of work. Like that's the other thing with teaching or doing anything, is that, yeah, you might see us on the stream for 2 hours, but there was an hour before it where I was prepping stuff. There was an hour the day before where I was like fixing a broken rig, all this stuff piles up, and it can kind of become like a time sink a little bit. Now, with what I'm doing with Agora, which is we're working to try and find this like nice happy medium, is they're offering reviews. So you can go to their site and order a one-on-one review, and I'll look at your animation and I can give you a 15-minute or a 30-minute review. I just did one today, actually. I'll watch your animation, I'll give you notes, I'll draw over it, I'll record myself talking to you, and then we send that to you, and there you go. Now you got your one-on-one critique. It doesn't cost very much. I think it's only $15 or something, $20. And I get a little bit of money for it. It doesn't take me too long. Agora is, on this mission to kind of create a really strong community and like a hub, like a place on the internet that animators can go to and share knowledge and learn from each other. And what's nice too is that these reviews, unless the student requests it to be private, they're all public.
Yeah.
So you can go and just watch them and learn from them without spending, any money. And I think that's kind of the next step, right? Is like, how can we get this knowledge out there so that the people that can't afford $1,500 for an online animation course can still kind of, soak up some of that information.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of them, and I think that's a very good learning medium, because when you take a class or you read a book or you watch tutorials, the teacher will point you in the right direction, but it might not resonate. While when you see not perfect animation and the teacher tells you this is because you haven't been looking at your root, or all the hips are not contrapposto and everything, it does resonate, because you can feel like there is something wrong in the animation, but you may not put your finger on it. And so watching reviews, especially those are like 30 minutes, so it's easy to digest. It's not a 2 hours long, review or something like that. So that's super. I do enjoy watching them beyond the scope of watching animation stuff, but because you always get some stuff to learn, and it's really easy to watch and very like super interesting.
Well, that actually one other thing that I think is important too is the idea of doing, like, let's say you're a lead on a game animation team. You have 5 animators. Now you're all remote, right? I never was doing one-on-one feedback sessions with my animators. We were still doing group dailies. So everyone would sign in to the meeting. I'd share my screen. We'd watch the animations. I'd give notes. And then it was always kind of like an open forum, like, anybody else have feedback, any ideas for, because I mean, there were times I'd sit in a theater, and there'd be 70 of us on a film. We would look at 30 shots back to back, for an hour or two. Oh boy, I learned so much from the notes other people were getting, and that's why I was able, like, the following week to final a shot faster, because I was like, oh yeah, I remember they wanted the character to stand more like this because of Pete's shot from last week. I already know that they're looking for that. But if I wasn't in the room for that critique, then I probably would have made the same mistakes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's important, especially now that we're all remote, that you still do group feedback sessions and dailies with your team.
Yeah, I think it does help to keep the team being a team, but also to feed yourself from other people's experience. And as you tell, you may watch some specific line of action that solve this kind of animation problem, and you didn't think of it before, and you saw that, and you're like, okay, that's gonna be a new checkbox in my animation tool set. So that's super interesting, and also you can, if you're working with other people, like an art director or something like that, their feedback also, if you can get this into the whole thing. When you were talking about the senior position, I think being able to get information from different people will make you better in a way. So that's totally a good way to do things. I just wanted to talk about a bit the Line project. Are you still working on it? I've seen. Yeah, go ahead. Explain us what
So
you
that
can.
so that project, I think I started it like nearly 4 years ago. I still believe in it. I still think that there's something there, right? And I want to explore it further. The problem is with that project that I learned was I picked it up partly because I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. Like, this is something I want to try and make, but also it's a good excuse to like learn Unreal. So it was kind of this device that was pushing me forward on a next goal I had, which was, hey, I want to learn Unreal to the point where like I can make a game on my own. And that kind of became like that goal, and Line was helping me sort of push that forward. The issue was, here I come from AAA games, and I'm like, well, I want super expressive, highly, visually beautiful characters in a completely unique world. And I want it to be, a third person camera where you can put the camera anywhere you want. And and at the time, I think I was playing Breath of the Wild. So I was like, you can go anywhere, and here's, me being totally dumb. I set out, that was the goal, right? Like, this is what I'm going to make. It's very easy to get people excited about something. It's very easy for me to say, hey, I've got this idea. I can get you excited. Do you want to help me with it? Do you want to work on this? I'll pay you. I'll give you some money if you design a character or model it or help me write this code or whatever. That falls off so quickly. like yeah. That it is so much work to keep other people motivated on something when it's not like a full-time job, that it became too difficult for me to work on the project, hold down a full-time job, like trying to ship other games, right? Have a family, enjoy life, that I've taken a step back from it. And I'm like, okay. Either I have two choices here. Either Line needs to be super scoped down. Like, I need to scope it so far down that I can handle it, because I can't find reliable people that want to work on it for a long amount of time and who will put up with me being kind of flaky because I've got so many other things going on, right? I've learned so much by working on it, and I still really believe in it, but I think it's too big for me.
Yeah.
And I want to revisit it in the future, but for the meantime, I've just kind of like shelved it. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pump the brakes on this thing. I still have the bug though. I'm still like, I've got 5 minutes before we have to leave for that thing. Oh, I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna, try to code something, or see, like, I had this idea for a game mechanic. Can I make it work? And that sort of thing. Like, that still is there. And so that's why, like, lately I've been playing around with this dog game idea where you're in the snow And that just came from this idea of like, what if you're a dog? That was it. And the other thing too was like I really wanted to try something with a fixed camera because I was having a really hard time with line where the camera could go anywhere. And I was like, I want to create a beautiful composition. I want to create just something really beautiful that you can look at. But then once you can move the camera and look somewhere else, I'm like, it's not beautiful anymore. What do I do? Like, and so I'm like, I want to just try something where I just lock the camera because then you know exactly what the player is going to see every time, right? Have you played Hades?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So Hades, it's so, I mean, it's an incredible game, just
yeah, yeah,
phenomenal game.
yeah, yeah,
But if you just look at the compositions and where they're placing foreground, midground, background elements, and how they're parallaxing and moving at certain points when the player gets to the edge of a screen or something like that, that's what I'm talking about. Like they're like, no, very purposefully, we're not letting you
yeah,
rotate the camera or anything because we want to be able to craft this feeling, for the player. And that was kind of a big breakthrough for me where I was like, wait, I need more constraints because if you can make it do anything, you're just going to drown. Like you're just, there's no way you can wrangle that, especially as like one guy who doesn't know what he's doing, poking around late at night. I needed to give myself like some of these kind of barriers
yeah,
to keep
limitations.
me
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
me focused.
yeah,
I struggle with like blueprints make a lot of sense to me. Like I open that up and I go, oh, I want to make this happen, and I can kind of like hack my way through it. It's some easy math stuff. But then once I go into shaders, I'm like, what is a subtract node? What is this? What's a RGB? What like what is happening here? Like it feels like it's a completely different language, and that's something I've been working on trying to like simplify it down so that I can understand like what if I put this node in there, like what is it actually doing
yeah,
to
yeah.
the
That's
thing I
yeah,
see on the screen,
yeah.
and so there's still like so much learning
Mm.
to go there, and it's none of it is wasted time. I think that's the important takeaway is like, man, the the knowledge and the confidence and just what it's doing to my brain when I look at games and I play games and I think about games.
Yeah,
It's been great. I love doing it. The end goal is to ship something. Like I don't like to not ship
yeah.
something. So, someday I might upload a file where I'm like, I don't know, I made a thing, just play it so that I can just say I did
Yeah,
it.
that's great. So yeah, that's yeah, I guess a lot of work, to handle your professional life and this kind of not professional thing, but still related. So and so I guess this is a good source of self-improvement too, because as an animator, I mean, you're grinding it every day at work. So and now directing stuff. But as you just told us, you are kind of discovering the happy world of shaders and stuff like that. Like, wow, why would you divide this with that? It doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good way to understand also when you talk to your maybe VFX artist or stuff like that to understand the thing they might struggle or the limitation when you say
Hmm.
I'd like this to do that, and they told you no, it's impossible because of the math behind this. Having this bit of culture, it really helps directing in a way or leading a team, even if it's not your specialty. That's great.
Yeah. It
That's
came in handy when I joined Riot. Valorant was shipped in Unreal, and we were moving so quickly that the knowledge that I had gained by just farting around in Unreal at night uh, really helped me a few times. There were times where like features weren't working, and I was able to open up the blueprint and look at it and figure out what was broken. I was able to prototype a lot of things, just like real quickly, like, oh, here's something we could do for character select, and I just would hack together a blueprint to make it kind of work and like fire off effects and things like that. And So it's any time that you spend, just learning that kind of stuff is not wasted at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
Now, I just want to say though, I don't think you have to. You don't have to be doing that kind of stuff in your off time. You know, if it's something you want to do, then do it,
yeah,
but don't feel like you have to do it. And this kind of, I realized this because my wife she said to me recently, she's like, so I've been off, right, for these last 3 weeks,
and
and she'll
you've
come
been busy on
home.
the computer.
Yeah, like she'll come home and she'll be like, Dave, where are you? And I'm like, I'm in the office. I'm in the office. She'll come in and then I'll be like, here, I made this dog run around in the snow. And she's like, you're on break. What are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I just had this idea. I just needed to do it.
Hmm.
And I wanted to see if I could, you know, and like, and she's like, man, you're just always, your brain's just not, it doesn't stop. Like you always want to be making something,
Hmm.
and trying to challenge yourself on something. And it's funny to hear that from like a third person
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
Now she's lived with me for 10 years and she's like, yeah, you just don't stop. And so I just want to stress, like, you don't have to do that. If you're kind of crazy like I am, then go for it, but also like know your limits.
hmm.
And there were plenty of times where I would be like, I'd come home and I'd be excited to work on something, and then 5-10 minutes in, I'm like, not tonight.
Yeah,
I'm done. I'm burnt out. I have to get up early in the morning. Boop, turn off the computer, just be like, nope, I'm not doing it. And because you don't owe it to anybody, you should be doing it for yourself. That's
yeah.
something I tell
Hmm.
quite a few people on Twitter, where I see people post something that they worked on, that they were excited and passionate about. They post it, it gets a lot of reaction, you know, then they feel this pressure
Yeah,
to keep posting stuff
yeah,
and to keep showing constant work and improvement. And it's like, no, 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 you don't do this for Twitter. Don't do this for someone else. You only do this if it's what you want to be doing. And if you need to take a break from it, take a break.
yeah.
No one cares. Like there's so much other stuff going on. No one's waiting for you to post something. It's fine.
Yeah,
So
anything artistic related is kind of passion motivated. So you have to keep this. I do totally agree on what you're saying, and I did this mistake also. As a YouTube content creator, at some point you have to post things, but there was a moment where. For like a month, I didn't post anything because I didn't want to. I didn't
mhm,
want to get into it because when you do those things, and whatever you are doing, whether you're a baker or you're not working in the artistic industry, if you're not doing something you want to do, you won't do it at the best. And I've seen, yeah, not necessarily on Twitter, but young animators or young artists like asking, do I have to work like every day, like for 16 hours a day? And said, no, just do what you want to do. In the end, most of the people that succeed are the one that kind of work more, but this is because they want to do it, because they are
mhm.
passionate, and so they don't burn out, and they can get a bigger load of work in a way. But that's not working. You've been spending like 2 weeks of break doing animating a dog. You weren't working. Even if
Right.
for non-animator people, it's like, yeah, you are on the computer as you do at your job, so you are working, and you're like, no. So yeah, that's the kind of the balance you have to find. Is you have to do it, and have fun. I think that's the moment you lose fun in what you are doing, I think that's kind of a red flag, in
Yeah.
your life. So yeah,
I
cool.
feed I feed off a lot too, of from my kids. They will, because they're playing games now, and they're consuming that stuff like so fast, and they really enjoy it. And I will try to ask them questions about what they're playing, and like, well, what do you think about that? Like, oh, do you wish you ran faster, or you could climb the wall, or
Mm,
like trying to plant seeds in their heads that like it could be different. Like you could make it in a different way. And then they'll come into the office and they'll be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Right? And I'm like running around as a dog in the snow, and they're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Here, try it." Right? And then they'll say like, "Well, what if he could swim?" And I said, "Give me a minute," right? And I go and I do some stuff, and I'm like, "Okay, try it now," or like, or what if you could push a snowball? And I was like, "Oh, that's a good. Let me see if we can figure that out," right? And then I'm like, "Hey, come here, come here, come here," and they come in, and like they're pushing snowballs around and stuff, and so there's this energy from them that they're excited to see the new thing, and I'm in a way showing them like, "Hey, you can do this," like this is absolutely a thing that you could make choices and influence this game, and then you could put it on your Nintendo Switch and your friends could play it and anyone in the world could play it, and it's not this like mysterious thing that only
Yeah.
certain people get to create games and think about how games are made. So it's a really good energy to feed off of for me.
Yeah, I think the new generation get that now. There are, and I see a lot of game school raising in France. While I did learn everything on my own, and I think I'm kind of the one of the generation, and maybe you too, where a lot of people did not necessarily go to specific school or hide this kind of mythology about game development. When you see the old school game post-mortem, you see that they were all made by people in their garage. It was very like mystical, and now it's kind of, yeah, being a game designer now is a job. It's a title, while maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago it didn't. What are you? I make game.
Yeah.
What is it making game? You play game, you don't make them. So that's great. Before we wrap up, I'd like to know if you have any advice to wannabe animator or young people watching the show and wanting to be
Yeah.
as you at some point.
Um, yeah, I would say something that I'm the most passionate about is personality through animation. It's one thing. Step one is figuring out what program to install, what buttons to push, right? Like what will happen if I run this script or use this tool or something. That's step one. Figuring out the mechanics of like, oh, this foot moves and this is a passing position, and that kind of stuff. What is weight? What is physics and balance and that kind of stuff. The next part, the hard part, is make me care about it. Like give the thing you're animating some personality, even if it's just a box. Like there's like that's the thing that I look for when someone submits a reel or I'm looking at an animation, whether I made it or someone else made it. Like, is there a spark there? Like, does this thing feel alive? Do I care about it? It doesn't mean I have to like it, right? It can still be a scary monster or an evil, horrible person. But is there something there that's like hitting me in a way it's not just movement. It's not just a thing moving on the screen.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that should be more of that should be a goal for more animators. A lot of times when I see things online, I'm kind of like, yeah, physically it's moving. It looks believable, but I just don't care about it. Like there's nothing there that makes me excited to watch it again or learn more about this character and that sort of thing. And so yeah, try to get more personality into your work. And I think just for the game industry in general, I think that's something that I'm still pushing really hard
Yeah.
for, is like, let's really make amazing characters that feel alive, that you want to learn more about and interact with. Let's say you're starting out, you don't, every minute you spend reading about animation, watching animation, trying it yourself, 3D, 2D, stop motion, whatever it is, right? You are learning. You're not wasting time. All of that is valuable. And it's all going to be garbage. It's fine. we all did it,
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
crappy stuff.
Like you asked me to put some videos into
Yeah,
Dropbox for you for this, and I almost put some old stuff. It's like,
yeah, you should.
uh,
It's not too late.
like maybe I'll throw some stuff in there for you since we're talking about it. But like student work is, that early work is it's rough, right? But you don't know what you're doing, so it's okay. You got to find your way and you got to find your footing there and just have fun, just enjoy it while it's happening, before it becomes like this 9 to 5
Yeah.
kind of job.
And I do believe share it even if it's crap, and get feedback when you're a student. That's super important. I have one of my colleagues like, I won't share this or I won't show this because it's not good enough. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the right step, because the day it's gonna be good enough, you have nothing more to learn in a way. So while it's now that it's so important, so just share it. You don't know, maybe in those crappy emotion there will be some kind of emotional stuff, and maybe it will hit something in the mind of people. So that's yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a good
I
thing.
I would just say definitely seek out feedback,
Mm,
and criticism. And that's a very important part of being an animator, is being able to receive and give meaningful criticism,
yeah.
because it's constant. Like someone asked me one time, like, oh, what's it like being an animator? And, you know, especially this is true in film, but basically every single day starts where you are told what you did wrong the day before. And then you spend that day trying to fix those things while also creating new things that tomorrow you will be told what you did wrong.
Yeah,
And that's the process, right? And if you don't learn to, deal with it and have a healthy relationship with that criticism, it's gonna be very painful.
yeah,
It's not gonna be a good experience, and people will not want to work with you, because it's this big circle. It's like, I'm going to give you feedback on your animation today, but you're going to give me feedback on my animation tomorrow, and we need trust, and we
yeah,
need to know that, like, hey, I might tell you I don't like the thing you made, but I still like you. Like, it has nothing to do with you as a person. It's just the thing you made isn't there yet, right?
yeah,
But let's work together to get it there. And so when you do seek out that feedback, make sure it's from people that you trust their
yeah,
opinion. You feel, I don't mean safe, like they're gonna sugarcoat stuff, but like you know that they are gonna be honest with you and that they know what they're talking about. A lot of times I'll see people post things that's very early student work, but then only other early students are kind
yeah,
of giving feedback. And that's where it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, make sure you're getting feedback from people that, should be giving you feedback. So always just be aware, right? Like, and you don't always have to do what people say. I think that's the other thing with feedback,
yeah,
is it's good to hear if someone says, oh, I don't like that, but at the same time, maybe you do, and that's okay. It's your thing. So stick with it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Great.
Great.
Anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
Oh, no, this has been awesome. Yeah, I just really, thanks for inviting me on, and
Yeah,
I hope everyone enjoyed this and got something out of it.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they will. I do super appreciating, because I've been like stalking you through emails. Like, I'm so happy to have you on the channel, and super happy to talk to you. So thank you so much for being a part of the channel, and being available for me. And hopefully I see you later, and I'm super
Absolutely.
excited to see what you are going to do with the people at Sony Santa Monica. So good luck for the new project.
All right. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Just let's keep in touch.
Yeah.
Anytime you need me, just hit me up.
Okay, cool. See you. Bye. Thanks.
All right.